it scared us so much that we had to walk together to my room to get that Bible and come back and pray in his room. We never separated the whole night.
Sure.
Until morning.
Welcome back to our program where we have our first year students here at Purelight share their experience of how God has transformed their lives and eventually led them here to Purelight Missions. I'm joined by Brother Sfiso Ngwenya, and he'll be sharing his story or his testimony of how God transformed his life and eventually led him to Purelight Missions. Good day, Brother Sfiso. How are you doing today?
I am well, and yourself?
No, I'm doing well, Brother Sfiso. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Who is Sfiso?
Who is Sfiso?
I'm a person who grew up in KZN. Born in Escort, and I grew up traveling between Joburg and KZN. Grew up believing in ancestors. I grew up as a normal Zulu person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is me.
All right. You said you grew up believing in ancestors. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Okay. So basically, the belief when we were growing up is that, or the belief back at home, is that the dead are watching over us. Mm-hmm. The dead are able to take our prayers to God. The dead are the ones who are sort of playing that the role of angels mm-hmm. in our lives. Mm-hmm. And in order for you to be able to communicate with them, you need to go to the altar, the home altar, where you burn incense. And you need to slaughter animals at certain events in order to appease them mm-hmm. and to I don't know how to put it, to sort of make a way for them to be able to hear you mm-hmm. and to take your prayers, basically. Mm. Yeah. So
were you actively involved in these things?
Yes, all of us, we grow up actively involved.
So, what part would you play in the rituals or in this belief?
Okay, now there are elders that actually are the ones who are communicating in that altar, mm-hmm. if I can call it that. There are elders who actually communicate. There are elders who are responsible for all of that, but you are also active in terms of whatever is needed. They are able to send you, go get this, mm-hmm. do that, mm-hmm. and also they bring you also to that altar so that you can actually speak yourself whenever that is required.
Now, having this background, how did this influence your view of life? Like the decisions that you made having this, because our religion, the way we are raised, plays a huge role in the kinds of decisions, the directions that we take in life. Did this background have any impact or influence?
Okay, when we are going to compare it with Christianity, mm-hmm. When you are in the ancestral worship mm-hmm. Life, basically the only thing that you are concerned about is the respect that you were taught mm-hmm. by your parents. Yeah. The things that you are acceptable probably in the community. Mm-hmm. And yeah, besides that, there is not much. Mm-hmm. The principles that are guiding you are simply the principles that are of the community standard. Mm-hmm. So you find that they are broken many times. Mm-hmm. And the more we move forward as generation after generation, many of those good principles are actually no longer, mm-hmm. many of the good principles in terms of behavior, yeah. No sex before marriage, mm-hmm. Things like that, they are now overlooked at. Mm-hmm. And you find that people just continue to live their lives. People just continue consuming alcohol and things like that, and obviously while still adhering to the ancestral worship.
So since you're saying that those principles are not being adhered to, they are looked down upon, and basically have a gateway to do whatever you want because it seems acceptable in society. How did that now change your life? Did it affect you in any way into now start doing things that socially is acceptable but biblically it's not supposed to be done?
Yes, that's the life. You live like that, and you can use the principles that you were taught by your parents to guide you and to try and be as good as you can be, but they are not as high as God's principles. Basically, they are on the human level.
Yeah.
So that is the view that one would have, and others can just decide not to follow those principles.
That's interesting. So I'm interested now to know how your educational background was like. What kind of a person or child were you? Primary school, high school, university? Yeah.
Okay. By God's grace, when I was young, I had a mother, and the mother was very strict, loving and strict at the same time, in the sense that she used to thoroughly marinate us so that we can follow the principles. And then she died. I was young when she passed on. However, the principles that she was instilling in us in that very young age sort of guided us through life. Even as difficult as it may have been, all of that worked in our favor because you did not have the luxury to do whatever you wanted to do, so you had to focus on your life, had to understand that things are difficult and things like that, and try and move towards the right direction, trying to make life better in the future. So growing up in primary school, I was just a kid, playful, but not much into the wrong things. High school, same thing happened. There was a lot of poverty, and so that helped me also to stick to the principles and follow the right path. Try by all means to follow the right path. Not in everything, of course. There are a few compromises here and there. And then in varsity, that is when I found the gospel. So things started taking a different turn.
Okay. How did you get to find the gospel in varsity? Because usually in varsity, that's where people that have the gospel lose the gospel. But what I like about it also is people that don't have the gospel can actually also find the gospel in varsity. How did you find the gospel?
It is a long story, but just to try and summarize. Here I was with the friends that I had. So we used to like to watch your horror movies and things like that. And I remember we did not watch those horror movies during the day. We were like, no, we must wait for night.
Yeah.
So, and not just night, it must be around 11, 12. So that's the time. We put on our horror movies there and watch. This one time we were watching this one. It was just me and the other friend I had. Sakile was his name. So we're there watching this movie, which I'm not going to mention by name. And it scared us so much. It scared us so much. I remember at that time God was already trying to introduce me to the scriptures. So I had a Bible in my room. We were watching this thing in his room. It scared us so much that we had to walk together to my room to get that Bible and come back and pray in his room. We never separated the whole night.
Sure.
Until morning. Only in the morning, when we see the sun, now I can go and sleep. And you can Now you can sleep. But I remember then there was the verse. It was Ephesians is chapter 6 from verse 10, where it speaks of the armor.
Yes. Put on the
Chapter
armor.
6 verse 10, and then from verse 10. And when I called my aunt to ask her, what can we read? No, she said Ephesians chapter 6 from verse 10, and then airtime ran off. So we read the whole thing from verse 10 all the way, and until where it says, I will send Tychicus, right, my servant, to comfort you.
Yes.
3 days later, we met Brother Phil. Brother Phil came evangelizing, going door to door, and then got to us, shared the scriptures with us. That is when I started to know.
You can learn something, or horror movies can teach us something. It can teach us to run to the Bible, because that's the only place that you can find safety. Wow.
Amen.
Wow. That's an interesting story. So you feel like Ephesians 6 verse 10 to 18 or 19, it played out in your life after God explains that we don't wrestle with flesh and blood, and then he sends someone to, and then the brother comes and gives Bible studies.
It's accepted right now. We are listening. Hey, and the way he was preaching, it was like, this is what God promised. Because we took that. Like personally, I took that as when he came in and preached to us, I remembered the verses of that, especially the part that says, I would send Tychicus to comfort you. And the words that he was speaking about God, they were just comforting. So I just remembered the verse. Yes.
Wow. So was this now your turning point?
Basically, yes.
So what happened after that? How did you now start growing in grace?
I started, so God started leading me to read the scriptures. Had a lot of questions. I would ask him a lot of questions. And from there, I met with...
what kind of questions would you be asking, if I may ask?
Questions basically about life. And how does God expect me to forgive? Because there's a lot of things that happened, happened in the past. And there are people who hurt you. And you know the human heart will hold on to those things. And now you're asking yourself, so God is expecting me to just forgive these people that did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to me and my siblings. And so such questions and others like that.
If God cares, why do we suffer?
Yes.
Is God even there? You know that.
Such questions. And by God's grace, He led me and gave me all the answers I needed, step by step. And then from there, I met Ngwenya, and another one who actually introduced a lot of things also to me, especially the Sabbath. That's when I started knowing about the Sabbath. And then that was when I was at home. And then the following year I went back to varsity because I did not finish the college time because of certain issues. So I went back to varsity, and then that is when I was there now at rest, keeping the Sabbath on my own. And you know that when you are alone and you're looking at time, now you start looking at the sun. The sun is not setting today. And I saw that now this thing is wrong. I'm not supposed to be keeping the Sabbath like this. And then fortunately, from Ngwenya, I had already heard that they are Adventists, and I had met some of the Adventists. And that is when I looked for student Adventists. And this one Sabbath, I remember just seeing some of the students well-dressed going to that bus. And I was like, no, I'll ask them when they come back. So I just went there and asked them, are you Adventists? And they said yes. And that is how I started attending church.
Yeah, just fast forwarding, how did you get to the point of being baptized?
Being baptized? Okay, when I took on, when I started attending the STASM, so during Bible studies, there'll be quoting, quoting the prophetess Ellen White. And they will try not to show us that they are quoting because they just wanted us to focus on the Bible, on the scriptures alone. So they would quote whenever it is necessary to expand on the scripture. So I really liked what they were quoting. So I wanted to know. So they told me, no, there are such books that we have. And then I started reading those books. And I enjoyed, and I just knew that, these are things that God has been teaching me. And here I just found more light on those particular principles or things that God has been teaching me in the scriptures. And
wow. And
then sometime baptism opportunity came, and then I just went and got baptized.
So after you got baptized, were you engaged in any mission work? Were you active in the church? What did you begin doing after your baptism?
Okay, now we are in the STASM. So I started, I was active in whatever was being done in the STASM. And then from there, they elected me to be part of the leadership of the STASM. And the rest of the 3 years that I spent in the adversity, I was a member of the leadership. So we would be doing whatever is necessary, organizing events, going for evangelism, distributing literature and things like that. So we were just active.
Wow. Because the reason I'm asking is because now you're a full-time missionary, and I'm interested to know how you got to this point of actually surrendering whatever. Did you finish university?
Yes, I did.
And you got which degree were you studying for?
Bachelor of Education.
Bachelor of Education. So now you have a Bachelor of Education, but now you're a full-time missionary. How did that happen?
Okay. I'm trying to summarize this whole thing. So we got out of university, graduated, of course. Started looking for employment. Got a contract at some point. And now it's an issue because now when you are looking for employment, I do not know if it was me. There are people also who are lucky enough, if I can say, who are able to get that employment without having to go through all the shenanigans that take place in those in the offices. So whenever I would get an opportunity, I would be offered an opportunity to bribe, directly, sometimes indirectly. So I had to let go of that route of bribing, because I would always go to the scripture to look for something that can at least allow me to bribe this person, because it's not me who's looking for a bribe, it's them. So, and every time I would find verses that are actually discouraging the bribing issue. So had to hold on by faith. One time got employed and for a year, and then the contract ended. Just after it ended, a lot of things had been happening. As a lot of things have been happening during the time, I got to a point where I got out of church. I got out of the church, joined another church, because of what was taking place, especially in my home. So during that time when I was out in the church and then attending, I got points where we contradicted each other when it came to scripture. So I decided also to step back from the church and just study on my own. And then from there, God took me. Because the contract had ended, now a friend suggested that I attend some Wendy House building training that was taking place in one of the missionary schools. And that is where I got a lot of information about true education. And then I understood a lot of things from there, and how the system basically, the worldly system is actually crippling our minds and the minds of the children that are growing up in it. And that is when I started questioning whether I want to continue with my career or not. And that is where actually God used that. God also used that platform to actually bring me back to the church. Now this time revealing the medical missionary world to me.
Wow. So how did they get to hear about Purelight?
Okay, now by God's grace, from that institution, Abundant Living, I was invited by the pilgrims in Kwamhlabuya. So as they invited me there, I went to them. After a few months, of course, I went to them, and then from there I met the trumpeters, and then I went with the trumpeters, and during that period when I was with the trumpeters, an accident happened at Purelight, and there's a sister who lost her life, who was a friend of the friend that actually recommended me to attend, to go and attend the training that was taking place in Abundant Living. And all of that event, that is when I started finding out about Purelight because of the accident. And in that, there was a lot of things that were happening. And I started, now I found out about the friend and heard, because she was once at Trumpeters as well. So I started asking about her, because now I found out, they knew her also.
Yeah.
So I started asking questions, and then they told me that now she was there, and then she wanted to go to Purelight, because Purelight is offering more on education, like more information on this medical missionary work. And from there, we were also planning, at the same time, we were also planning for a camp that was going to take place in Mandeni. And then when we went to the camp, somewhere in the midst of the camp, I met a brother who was also involved in this accident, which I also heard of. I wanted to talk to him, also ask him about Purelight, and then he explained to me a lot of information that I needed. Exchange contacts, he gave me the application forms, and then
many times when tragedies come our way, we often see it as a bad thing, but sometimes God allows certain tragedies to take place so that He can reveal Himself to some people that needs to hear the gospel, or to some people it can be a new beginning because of a tragedy. And I'm seeing that the accident, as we've viewed it here at Purelight, as a major tragedy and a loss of a few lives, it was an eye-opener for you to actually see and hear more and eventually come here to Purelight. So, there are blessings in tragedies at times. So how did you get to the point of now coming to Purelight after hearing about it?
As I mentioned, after finding out about Purelight, I met this brother in person who was also in the accident, involved in that accident. And then I went to him, asked him questions about Purelight, and I realized after he explained to me about Purelight that actually I need to go to the school. There is more that I can learn from the school. And in fact, the desire in me was that I wanted to know more. I wanted to know about medical missionary work thoroughly before I can start working. Because having less knowledge and approaching a field with less knowledge, you actually do more damage than good. So I wanted to make sure that the foundation is proper.
It's very interesting what you're saying, because many people actually have an issue or a challenge with accepting the fact that Purelight offers a 3-year course. But you're saying something interesting, that if you enter the field without sufficient knowledge, you can actually do more damage with the little that you know. Yes, they are good that you can do, but it's always, you think, better to get thoroughly trained before you enter the field. I believe that's how even biblically, that's how we see it. Disciples, 3.5 years to be trained, Paul, 3 years to get trained, and then you get in the field. I believe you become much more effective, and it seems like this is what you're looking for.
Yes, that is exactly what I needed. And Purelight, just that accident opened for that to happen.
So now, there are many challenges that people face, many discouragement that people face as they are beginning to do the application until the day of arrival, actually. What were some of the challenges that you faced as you were applying, and what gave you strength to continue with the application and to continue with the hope that you're going to go to Purelight despite the challenges?
I prayed and I asked God to please open this door if He is willing that I should attend Purelight. And then I applied and basically I started waiting on Purelight. And it's interesting because I looked for employment before that, and doors were not friendly in opening, in terms of opening. You only found a door. I only found one door which I was able to enter without any compromises. And this time, it just so happened that I got 2 to 3 offers of being employed.
Yeah.
And now I had made, just after I had made this decision to be a full-time missionary, now I'm getting a lot of offers. This other one even went straight to my home to actually look for me at home. And it's interesting. It was just an interesting thing to me, and I had to say no to all of those offers and focus on what God has opened, on the door that God has opened before me. And it took so long to get a response that I even thought it's not going to happen. So I was now preparing to go back home, even though I knew that I needed to continue with the medical missionary work. I did not know how it was going to happen. And by God's grace, just at the end, I got the call. I got the response. An interview was set, and then I got a call. I got interviewed, I know I got the interview, and then I got accepted.
Wow,
Yes.
wow. No, thank God, Brother Sfiso. Do you regret the decision that you've made of letting everything go for full-time mission work?
Not once.
What is your advice to someone that might be watching this and they are hesitating, surrendering their lives to Christ, becoming a full-time missionary, or they want to pursue their dream job, whatever? What advice can you give to someone that might be watching this?
Someone who is being called in their heart to be a full-time missionary. I would say follow the calling. That is what I would say. Follow the calling. Go to Facebook, search about Purelight, find out more information, and there are a lot of teachings on YouTube. You can actually go through the Purelight page on YouTube and learn and actually see that this is not just a work. This is the most important work that humans can be called into.
Thank you so much. We didn't pay him to promote Purelight missions, by the way, but thank you so much, Father Sfiso, for sharing your story with us of how God has brought you to Purelight missions. And if you are interested to know more about Purelight, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at Purelight Missions, and Instagram's Purelight Mission, Purelight_missions. And you can find out more about Purelight missions. But for now, this is all we have. Thank you so much for joining us once again, and hope to see you next week, same time, same place. Goodbye for now.